Hi, and welcome to the I Teed Myself podcast. My name is Matthew Miniman, and this is episode 53, What Can P.T. Barnum Teach Us About Phishing? So, P.T. Barnum of Barnum and Bailey Circus, you younger listeners, those born before, or rather after the turn of the century, turn of the millennia, may not know what P.T. Barnum and Bailey Circus is, but for really almost 200 years, it was a big event that would come to town, and you would be able to go and see this performance, these performing circuses that would have lions and tigers, elephants, trainers, acrobats, clowns, mimes, scary shit of all shapes and sizes, cool gymnastics and acrobatics from every sort of walk of life, and then you'd also have some sights to see, and there would be different things to do. But before that came about, Barnum's Circus was actually a traveling museum and menagerie. So that's how P.T. Barnum got his start. If you don't know who P.T. Barnum is, he's the guy who started the Barnum and Bailey Circus. Now, P.T. Barnum is, or was, sort of the main character in the movie The Greatest Showman that had the greatest Wolverine, Hugh Jackman, starring as the titular, as the P.T. Barnum character, which showed a different kind of perspective on how P.T. Barnum was. And it's complete bullshit. Like, it's just a whitewash bullshit. There's nothing really accurate about anything about what happened in P.T. Barnum's life. So the real P.T. Barnum didn't get started in circus work until he was in his 60s. Before that, he was in the United States government. He had done a lot of other jobs, and really he didn't get his start until he found a few not normal folk that he could exploit. And that's kind of how P.T. Barnum's original circus worked, is that it was basically exploiting non-standard looking individuals. And when I say that, I literally mean people who just weren't white and normal. And this is shown in a couple of ways. You know, one of the most famous attractions at P.T. Barnum's grand traveling museum, menagerie, caravan, and hippodrome was a woman named Ruth Heth. Ruth Heth started working for P.T. Barnum at the age of, in her 70s. And this woman, you know, back in the 1800s, this was all in like 1835 and whatnot. But Ruth Heth was like any 70-year-old in the 1800s, where medicine was basically hacksaws, cocaine, and whiskey. She had a face made of leather, and, you know, just looked old because she was. But you know, there was no skincare regimen back then. There was no way to make yourself appear younger, and women were allowed to age naturally. Anyways, Ruth Heth, looking as old as she possibly could, looking as old as fuck, was basically marketed as a 165-year-old woman who had been George Washington's nanny and would basically tell stories about George Washington as a boy. And it was all complete bullshit, of course, because she was 70 years old, not 160. And she's basically forced to travel around with P.T. Barnum for years as an old woman. And then when she died, her autopsy was put on display. Like, P.T. Barnum let people pay to watch her autopsy. Not only that, but he would subjugate Aboriginal people. There's the story of Tumbo, who was basically kidnapped along with 17 members of his family or tribe from Palm Island and basically forced to be a living attraction, essentially looked like they were in a zoo for P.T. Barnum. And then when Tumbo passed away, his body was not allowed to be returned to his family or returned back to his homeland. No, it was pickled, and he was turned into an attraction in death. And so, a lot of problems there. I'm not going to try to get too philosophical or political or any of that bullshit. But needless to say, it is kind of weird. Not a great place for you to be, especially when you're broadcasted in 2017 as this rich scamp who's only taking advantage of those people who don't know any better. Separating the rich dumb fools from their money, sort of thing. He also, the last thing I'm going to cover is that he also, would like, he had a menagerie of animals that he would bring along with him. And on a trip from New York to across the country, one of his elephants escaped. And rather than take the time, because he was running late, rather than take the time to corral this animal and put it properly back in its place, or even, giving it a home wherever it escaped from or whatever, he kills it and uses the body as an attraction as well. So man really just loves to use anything and everything that he can to make a buck. And that's kind of how we look at him from a perspective of phishing emails. Again, in 2017, there came out this movie, The Greatest Showman, which shows him to not be such a terrible person. Like he was fighting for people's rights. He was giving the freaks a chance at a normal life, so on and so forth. He danced with Zac Efron. Come on. How could he not be a great guy? But this was all bullshit. And this is kind of how phishing emails appear. So if you were a circus goer in P.T. Barnum in like the 1800s and you didn't think too hard about what you were looking at, it seemed fantastical. It seemed amazing, and you could easily fall into the spell and accept it. And make no mistake that P.T. Barnum made a ton of money off of the subjugation of these folks. And when you receive a phishing email, it can seem legit, just like P.T. Barnum seems legit to a circus goer in the 1800s. Your email can seem legit, and it can look like, or when you open it, it can seem like it's telling you something fantastic, or leveraging your sense of excitement, of anticipation, of dread, of woe. And it really can put you in a place where you are not thinking about what is actually going on behind the scenes. But just scratching the surface of a phishing email can reveal just how shitty of what behind it really is. And you can do this a lot of different ways. And I'm not going to go over the very, very specifics of how to check a lot of this stuff, just because, based on your email client or your specific mail or your IT team, you might have different ways to do this. But if you look up how to do a lot of this through your own methods or have your IT team show you, you can definitely leverage these types of tools to understand better how or why or where an email has traveled, and understand if it truly is a phishing email. Now, when you receive an email, one of the first things that any security professional should tell you is do not click on anything in the email if you were not expecting it. If you were not expecting an attachment, if you were not expecting a file, if you were not expecting a link, don't click on it. These things are hazardous. And what I mean by that is if you get an email from somebody who claiming, for instance, you're a business owner and they're claiming that they are representing an organization and would like to do business with you, and they're providing you with a contract, you might want to treat whatever that contract is with a very suspicious look. You know, if you don't expect an email, people aren't just going to try to hand you money. That's just not how this works. They're going to want you to hand them money. And when you are working with or working on individuals outside of your organization on a regular basis, and you receive emails with attachments, if you regularly receive emails with attachments, you should come up with a method to open those attachments in a way that is safe, in a way that will not compromise your primary computer or your organization in whole. And there are a lot of different ways to do this. You can look at the attachment beforehand. You can do a preview. There's a lot of different ways to run this. Never enable macros. Never allow an application to or an attachment to bring you to another place. Always treat it with suspicion. That's kind of the primary thing when it comes to attachments. But when it comes to links, always right-click, copy the link, and paste it manually into a private or incognito browser so that you are not feeding that browser, not feeding that link, whatever credentials you may have saved. And that will help you identify what's going on. But also when you paste it into the browser, you're giving yourself a chance to see where that link is going to take you and try to understand what it's doing. Because if a phishing email is being sent to you that is supposedly a link to a customer file, and it really is bringing you to a phishing website that has something akin to portallogin.com, you might be someplace where you don't want to be. And so those are sort of the things that you can watch. Those are some of the things you can watch out for with links and attachments in an email. Another thing you can do to look at, to scratch the surface on an email, is look at the sender. Fuck's sake, just look at the sender. The name that appears up as the from, that is arbitrary. You can change that. I've said that before. You can change that email any way you want. I can make myself P.T. Barnum if I really want to. Not that I would. His name is fucking terrible and absolutely the worst goddamn first and last name, or first and middle name that I've ever heard. Philo, what is it? Felonius something. Yeah, his name just kind of is shitty to me. I don't know why. Anyway, Phineas Taylor. That to me is just screams, I'm going to take you for all the money that you're worth. Anyway, I can change my name to be Phineas Taylor if I wanted to. But there is information that is static within the email that you receive. And that is what we call the envelope. The envelope, or the header rather, the header is immutable. The header is the information that the server sends to the client that details where the email came from, who actually sent it, and so on and so forth. And you can investigate this yourself. If you have an email that is showing up as coming from the United States government, the IRS, and you look at the header and the email address, the originating server or IP address that is inside of that header is a Google IP address, you're not dealing with the US government. The United States government isn't going to use Google IP addresses. Sorry, it's just not going to happen. But those are some of the ways you can scratch the surface to really understand how shitty the thing that you're looking at is. And the emails a phishing email can provide you with any sort of sense of dread or FOMO. It can definitely leverage fear, uncertainty, and doubt to try to get you into a position where you're just going to click and ignore any of the information that's behind it. One very good example that has been out recently are emails that detail that you have a voicemail waiting. And because a lot of people don't understand how their phone systems may work, they might look at this and see, oh, I have a voicemail, and they'll click into it. And because they click into this link that is in this voicemail message, they'll believe that they need to sign in to gain access to whatever voicemail it is. And everybody loves to see messages, just like everybody loves to see a freak, Everybody loves to see a freak. Everybody loves to point and laugh at the freak. So let's click on the email link to get us to see what that voicemail is. It might be important, right? It might be something that is life-changing. And that is how these attackers will leverage this sort of behavior to get you to engage with them, to gain your access, to gain your trust, gain your access, to then steal whatever it is that they're looking for, your credentials, your money, whatever. And so a lot like P.T. Barnum, these attackers just they leverage your sense of wonder to exploit you and attempt to gain access to what you're looking at. One of the last stories to tell about P.T. Barnum, the last story I'll tell about P.T. Barnum is actually one of the most interesting things, and it really kind of ties in how phishing emails remain successful, 24 years after email really became popular. And that is, P.T. Barnum originally had a singular building in which he had his museum of freaks. I don't remember what it's called, and right now I'm too lazy to look at it, and it's not important to the story anyways. But it was in New York, and this museum had several different rooms, and it was configured in a very weird way. And a lot of it was because P.T. Barnum knew that if people left or got confused, they would miss some things, and then they would pay more money to come back to see whatever it was that they missed. This is a really good way to do things because, people can get easily confused and they can leave. And there's basically, if you make a policy of no admittance after you leave, then you're forcing them to pay an additional ticket to see everything. And so P.T. Barnum also understood that generally people are stupid as fuck. And so one of the things that he did is he named an attraction egress, because he knew normal people, normal Americans, don't know what the fuck egress means. And so he basically made an attraction, see the egress, and would have a sign pointing out to a door. And when they would open the door, they'd be brought out to the alley outside of the museum. And because there's no readmittance, they'd have the people would have to go back in and pay for it. And this is because egress means exit, if you didn't know. So this is a good example because, attackers are relying on people's inability or refusal to understand how technology works. And so they are relying on people to be ignorant to what email is, how it travels across the internet, and how to properly spot links and fake email addresses and fake emails. And they rely on this to get users to click on links to then perform an attack or to gain money or whatever it is that they're trying to do. And unlike P.T. Barnum, where generally people saw this, that when they fell for it, they were like, "Oh, I'm such a fucking moron. I guess I'll tell my friends, don't miss the egress." And everybody kind of laughed it off. Unlike that, if you fall for an attack, if you fall for a phishing email, you may cost your business a lot of money. You may end up harming your own internal company, your own internal business, and causing untold number of damages and gaining this asshole who is exploiting you and others a significant payday. Well, that's all I got time for today, guys. I hope you have a great day.